The scene from Let's Make Love, the 1960 film starring Marilyn Monroe. It was on the set of this movie in Los Angeles where photojournalist Larry Schiller, at the age of 23, took snapshots of the iconic movie star for his very first time. And to mark the 50th anniversary of her death, Larry joins us to talk about his new memoir, Marilyn and Me, A Photographer's Memories. He's also published a book of his photography, also entitled Marilyn and Me. And it's very good to have you on the show this morning. So 23 years old you were?
I was 23. I was just starting in photojournalism out of college, and I was a scared kid.
Oh, boy.
I'd photographed a couple celebrities, Lee Remick on Anatomy of a Murder. But Look magazine called me, and they were assigning like 3 photographers that wanted different points of view. And I was the new kid on the block, as the saying goes. And I went out there, and I was just scared. And she walked by me just as I didn't even exist in the universe. She was unapproachable, and then the press agent grabbed her and said, "This is Larry from Look." And she turned around and became Marilyn Monroe, like a light switch, not because of Larry Schiller, but because of Look magazine, because those were the publications that gave publicity to sell tickets.
That mattered, the publication. So we have a series of photos to get right to. I would love for you to continue your storytelling around each one.
Sure.
And we'll put the first one up where she's in the swimming pool.
Well, this was taken 2 years later. I had already ingratiated myself by previously publishing her. She knew my work. And I had a meeting with her about 10 days before the shooting of a scene in the film in which she's supposed to be swimming around in a nude-colored bathing suit, so it looks like she's not clothed. And she says, "What would happen if I jumped in the swimming pool with the bathing suit but came out with nothing on?" And Pat Newcomb, her press agent, said, "You're not serious. You're not going to do that." And she says, "Well, I'm thinking about it." What we didn't know at that time is that the studio was already ready to fire her. She'd been late on the set, costing them millions of dollars, and she was going to try to prove she had as much publicity value as Elizabeth Taylor did. Elizabeth Taylor was making Cleopatra on the covers of every magazine with her affair with Richard Burton, and Marilyn Monroe wanted to do it. And I was very cocky at that time, I have to admit. I'm still a little cocky. and I said, "Well, you know, you're already famous, Marilyn. Now you're going to make me famous." And she looked at me and said, with this look like, "Don't be so cocky." And then she said, "Photographers like you can easily be replaced."
Oh, boy.
And I had to get, I mean, she was a no-nonsense woman. She'd been run over by so many trucks in her life by the time I met her, and survived those trucks. That's the interesting thing.
How do you build trust with someone like Marilyn Monroe? Because she'd had a million people take her picture before, to the point where you could even get her to consider to take off the bathing suit.
I don't think there is any trust at all whatsoever. I think it is that she gambled with me. You know, it's very much like Andropov said to me when I made the film Peter the Great in the 80s. The word trust doesn't exist in my dictionary, but I've decided to gamble with you in making the film. And I think that was it with Marilyn also. I think that there was very little trust at that point in her life. You know, she'd been inside of Payne Whitney. She had 3 marriages that had fallen apart. I mean, you know, I've had a couple that have fallen apart myself. She was struggling between her relationships with Bobby Kennedy and John F. Kennedy, Frank Sinatra, all of that. So she had very few weapons left in her life to prove that she was a great actress. You know, when she was
in this period, she was all of 30.
She was 35 years old when I photographed her the second time. But you have to remember, great actresses like Jean Harlow died at a very young age too. But, you know, Marilyn was somebody who was desperate at this point. I didn't realize it. And, you know, I was climbing the ladder, and she was about ready to fall off of it, tragically.
There was a great photograph, you talk about the tragedy at Marilyn's funeral, of Joe DiMaggio and his son, I think we have here. Explain what we're looking at.
Well, you know, the night Marilyn died, the phone records, and Joe DiMaggio Jr. on the right in his military uniform was probably the last person to speak to her about the problems that he was having with his girlfriend. And DiMaggio rushed to the mortuary after she died and made all the arrangements for the funeral, and also, I think, sent out the word that he didn't want anybody there except those that were really Marilyn's friends. Sinatra didn't show up. Dean Martin didn't show up. Pat Newcomb, her press agent, did. You know, the Strasbergs. And there was DiMaggio walking with his son, solemn. You know, it was a very, very difficult moment for him. I think he really, truly loved her. and I think she loved him. The only thing is the chemistry of two world celebrities didn't work.
Couldn't do it. How about the Marilyn Life cover you shot? Let's take a look at that.
This cover, which appeared after, there were two covers. One when she did the famous swimming pool scene, and this cover, which you're seeing on the screen, which surprised me myself when Life used it the week after she died as the cover. It was called Memories of Marilyn. It is an extraordinary picture, but to show you, here's this book with all of my photographs, and to give you an idea, that's one frame, but you want to see 3 frames that I took in a row. These are 3 different Marilyns. Look at that. You see? And Life picked the one that was befitting the moment. As you know, John, a picture editor can take out of a photographer's the picture that makes the moment. And, of course, that did, and I'm very proud of that.
Why does Marilyn Monroe endure to this day? Why, when a film comes out, everybody rushes to see it, and they're fascinated by her life? What is it about her?
I had an exhibit which opened here in New York at the Stephen Kesher Gallery, and there were all young girls that showed up. Hundreds and hundreds of young kids. And mature women, too. More women than men. I think Marilyn never offended a woman. Women were not offended if their husbands were looking at Marilyn Monroe. There was something about her. It's as if you wanted to save her life. You wanted to say, if I was there, she wouldn't have divorced DiMaggio. Her miscarriages, which she presented to the public in a very, very, I think, realistic way. I think her life was out there to be revealed, but not in a tabloid way. It was something that you felt, I want to be part of that woman. I want to save her. A little bit of her voice. Look, she was a diamond that was cut a certain way. I don't think you can find another one. Look at this picture. Yeah. This is a beautiful young girl. This is the day before her last day on the set. And she's talking to Tommy Thompson at Life magazine to go with the story of my pictures. This is her leaving that afternoon.
We have a couple more of your photos from the 1960s, your campaign photos. RFK asleep on the floor. Why don't you continue the sentence? Where is he? When was this?
Well, I think we were going from the Dakotas to Northern California, San Francisco or someplace, and this was in May and June of 1968 before his untimely death. And, he was like everybody. You'd work late at night, and then you'd get on a plane and you'd have a 4-hour ride. So what did you do? You took the pillows, you went right on the floor and slept there. He slept like everybody else did. And I remember an incident that took place, not with me, but I heard the story. I was in the back of the plane. There were other journalists in the front. They had some problems with the plane, and it went down the runway and came back. And the next time it went down the runway, he turned to a journalist and said, I want you guys to know that if we don't make it, I got the headlines, your name's in small print. But that was the Kennedys. I mean, they let themselves open, and that was the wonderful thing. And Ed Guthman, his aide, was just wonderful. They surrounded themselves with really talented people.
We could go on with these pictures. My gosh, RFK with the JFK portrait, Nixon conceding. My gosh, it is really nice to meet you. The memoir is Marilyn and Me, A Photographer's Memories. Lauren Schiller, thank you so much.